So my question is about I've already put it in the YouTube box actually. So if you see from my YouTube name is actually Ben Woods. So if you see a question from me about that, don't worry about it now. But my question's about karma.
Yeah.
And as I've kind of understood it, is the non-dual perspective on karma is more to do with like the karma is kind of egoic identification or conditioning. My question is, do you believe in kind of the traditional sense of karma as well, and that what goes around comes around, and that or that even maybe there's kind of like karmic kind of energy stored in the body that is to do with like moral or immoral actions that we do, like even in micro amounts throughout the day.
I remember us speaking before, Joseph, even though you were called Ben before, you've asked me about, I think, karma before, or good or bad actions, and we talked about shame. Is that correct?
Yeah, it was more about shame, yeah, and stuff like that.
And I just wouldn't go into this with you because I think that your mind is maybe stuck in this type of thinking.
Right. Okay. Well, that's totally cool. Like, if that's your perspective, that's fine.
Yeah.
I'm only asking. I mean, I read in Siddhartha, you know. I'm not like, I'm not I'd rather have the conversation. Like, I know you're worried about my kind of like how I'll react to this, but I think it's kind of it's like a fair question, isn't it? Like,
it is a fair question, but you didn't let me finish. I just was going to say that I just don't think it's any point going into mind here. The question that I, as a non-dual speaker, would question to you is, where are these thoughts coming from? Like, who are you? So it's not that I'm saying to you that you're doing something wrong by asking that question. It's just that that question leads to more thoughts about what is good and bad, what is right and wrong. And anything that I say to you is just a belief that belongs to this character, which is really irrelevant. Like, to speak about freedom, it's beyond the idea of karma or no karma. It's what is experiencing right now. You know, the idea of karma and good and bad actions will go around endlessly, and it can be really satisfying for the mind to know these things. But I'm sure there's so many more intellectual or precise talks about this from other speakers that you can listen to. So my question to you would be, where do these thoughts come from? In your experience now, who is thinking these thoughts?
Well, I recognize that if I try and think of myself, that images come into my mind.
Yeah.
And that.
And what are the images? What are the images? Like, what do you imagine yourself like?
Well,
in this moment.
I have like constant like a lot of images kind of in my body as well. I don't know if that's kind of and I know like identification can be stored in the body.
Yeah, totally. I think that's accurate. You know, that stories and images also arise in the body as feelings, as thoughts, as images. You know, all types of things. I think it's not just this mind like we imagine that's in the brain.
Yeah.
We're fascinatingly complex beings.
A lot of that, I do have like kind of a lot of I can hear, a lot of the time I can hear it in my voice, like kind of a character, or like or a kind of I sometimes like the kind of sometimes it's a kind of shameful character, and sometimes it's a kind of it's the opposite. It could be more of a kind of like vain kind of character, like, and I feel like a lot of kind of weird signals like in the body saying that wasn't quite accurate, that wasn't quite true or authentic. or the way something comes up, the way my voice kind of, sometimes there's some kind of like blockage in my voice, or whether that might be fear or something like that.
Yeah.
My original question is, because this is actually what I'm trying to kind of resolve, is essentially how much of it is identification, or is there some truth to the fact that there is a kind of like traditional karmic sense? Because I read Siddhartha recently again, and at the end of his kind of you know, he goes and has a family, drinks, and you know, like kind of lives a worldly life. There's a line where he says he feels like he's full of sin, and I think he looks at his reflections and he feels full of sin, and I really resonate with that, and maybe that's because of my kind of identity. I've got like a shameful identity at the moment. But
who is that? So you've got this feeling of this character that's full of sin, and this character wants to be free of that and wants to wake up so it doesn't experience that anymore. And that character feels like it's inside the body. I'm just projecting onto you. I don't know. Maybe you don't feel like you're inside the body, but it feels like it's related to the body. But there is something that's conscious of that in this moment now. And that consciousness isn't the character. So at the moment, consciousness maybe feels like it belongs to the character. But when there is delving into experience, there might be a seeing that consciousness, who you truly are, doesn't belong to the character. When there is belief that consciousness and that who you truly are belongs to the character, there is seeking which entails, and seeking can involve this idea of sin. I am a bad person and I must become good. Because you feel like you've lost something, or there feels like there is an absence of something, or there doesn't feel an at-homeness, there feels a restlessness, and it goes on to the idea of you being bad. So what is it that's watching that character? Who are you? In this moment, who are you? I'm not saying don't work on the character, and these things that you've spoken to about karma, you can speak to somebody that works on the character with. But here we're exploring who's experiencing that character that feels sinful. And where is that character located?
Yeah, I used to, for a long time, I was very much like, the idea of like, the fact of consciousness as being the fundamental reality, and that all my ideas about myself are inside that, and that what my actual identity is consciousness. That all resonated and made a lot of sense to me, and I'm not saying it isn't true, but like it totally could be true. The kind of, but I find myself kind of being really like trying to be really kind of I don't know, like really questioning everything at the moment anyway, because of what's happened to my general state. So when I ask myself who sees myself, who sees my thoughts, etc., the idea that the consciousness is primary, I still have that as like I still understand that, and I can still, but part of me, but there's a part of me now that asks, is that not just a kind of abstract idea that
could be, if it's not experienced, it's an abstract idea, and it maybe could be an avoidance. So it's something that's right here in the moment. It's not something that's intellectual. And what you might also be trying to say to me, but that also again might be a projection of me, is that maybe there's a part of you that wants to work on the character a bit more. And that's totally valid, but that's not really what I'm here to do, to work on your character. I have done that a lot in the past because I worked on my character a lot, so I have like lots of ideas and philosophies and chakra and way of working on it and exploring it. But really what I teach is non-duality, which is a pointing back to the absolute. But I think it's totally valid to work on the character. And I did many years of working on the character and exploring what it was to be this apparent Lisa and what her suffering was. And that actually created a lot of space for me to go deeper into non-duality, ironically. Because before that, Lisa had lots of bizarre ideas and had lots of suffering and had lots of problems. And so there was lots of mind activity and lots of like uncomfortable bodily sensations. And until that relaxed a bit, non-duality in a way was conceptual. So I'm not dismissing that, but it's like this might not be the best place for working on the character, because I'm going to keep pointing to the absolute.
Well, that's fine. That's good, because my really the crux of my problem. Well, the crux of what I'm kind of trying to resolve is essentially how much truth there is to non-duality.
That's a great question, and that really has to be experienced. So if you believe me, if you believe non-duality, then you will always doubt non-duality. So it's really important to know this experientially. So in this moment, who is experiencing, and where does that experiencing come from? So there is thinking that's happening. There is, like you said, messages happening in the body. Like, I can't remember how you phrased it, but there's like these sensations, energies appearing in the body, and thoughts and images appearing in the body. There's an image of you, and that goes with lots of sensations. And then there is something that's experiencing that. And who and what is experiencing that? And how...
any image that I kind of conjure is obviously just another image
inside it. So, yeah, totally. So it's what's experiencing now that is not conceptual, that cannot be seen, but is seeing. And where does that seeing start and stop? So our mind says the seeing starts, the consciousness starts maybe inside my brain or behind my eyes or behind my head, and it stops somewhere. But in actuality, when there's a deepness into experiencing, consciousness cannot be found. It's nowhere and everywhere. It's in my voice, it's in the hum of the computer, it's in the lights, it's in the room, it's in the floor, it's in the emotions, it's in the sensation, and it's in no place. So you never find consciousness. And this consciousness also has a sense of being. It's like this being alive, and both will always be there no matter what happens, if the person suffers or doesn't suffer. When the person is lost in confusion or not in confusion, it will always be there.
Isn't it a sense of being? Wouldn't that be, because I'm really playing devil's advocate now, and I'm sorry, but this is just kind of where I'm at the moment. So I have to be honest about what the kind of thoughts that arise when
totally.
So like, what the thoughts that arise essentially are, if there's a sense of being, then that's another image in consciousness, and so that can't be it, whatever it is. And also, if everything, all the images are inside consciousness, and consciousness can't actually be seen, it kind of makes, I kind of recently become more concerned that that's kind of it's a very easy thing to sell because you can't see it. You see what I mean? So it's like, it's kind of like, the reason you can't see it is because it can't be seen. And then my kind of, I don't know, I become like wary of that, because that's almost like, like I said, it's very easy to sell. Like, you don't have to prove it. You just have to, someone just has to, like, and I can recognize that everything that I experience is within my experience. And consciousness is kind of almost miraculous. So that does make me think maybe it really is something to it. Because how can a brain conjure a subjective experience?
Yeah, and I think these are really great questions, and I don't think you should ever believe anyone, but I think you should, there needs to be a going into what's actually happening in the experience. Can there ever be experience without consciousness? And where does consciousness start and stop? And yeah, you can't see on the human level consciousness, but yet consciousness is happening. So it's the most intimate sense of experience. And the beingness, some people would say that you see beingness, but when it's really seen as it is, the beingness is like the love side of consciousness. Without the beingness, consciousness just becomes very empty in a way. So it's like the opposite side. So yeah, it might seem like that, but as you go deeper into experience, you'll notice that they're two sides of one coin, that consciousness and beingness belong together. Like it's not something, beingness isn't something you see, it's something that is this aliveness, this being. But this is really great, and I really think, Joseph, that these are great questions, and you shouldn't believe me or any other any other teacher, but just go into experience. Like not now, you don't have to do that now, you can do, but it's what is beyond me. Can there be existence without consciousness? What would exist without consciousness? What would that look like? So can that ever leave me? You know, so when I feel lost, when I feel like I don't know what they're speaking about, who is conscious of that? So yeah, it might feel like the greatest con. It's like something you can't see on the character level, but yeah, it's looking, because what would happen if there was no consciousness? And does consciousness belong to the person? If it belonged to the person, then the person would be able to see consciousness. But these aren't things that I'm trying to sell to you. This is really something that has to be experienced. And that's really you, even though you is illusory, going in and then finding there is no in or out.
Yeah. I've got a lot of concerns, but I don't want to kind of keep just throwing all my kind of doubts out there, because I feel like we might just kind of that might be endless at the moment. Yeah.
But doubt is good. It's good to be, to ponder what's being said, not to just buy it like a new religion. That's a really good thing to do. But it's just notice, when that doubt is connected to old experiences and old emotions, when it is, then it becomes a very emotional thing. Like, she's conning me, she's lying, they are conning me.
Yeah, I don't believe anyone's really I don't believe anyone's like doing it like, and I'm not saying that I believe anything, to be honest. I'm not sure what's really, to be honest, but I don't think there's anyone really out there that is doing it knowingly. If it isn't real, I'm just not sure. I'm just not sure. There's always something that I can come up with that goes, but what about that?
Yeah.
And then also from the other side, so I feel like I'm a constant
Yeah, and then there's something that's experiencing that. So the fact that that's happening, that your mind is oscillating between this thought and that thought, there is something that is conscious of those thoughts, and
not just be me.
That is where the juice is.
Could that not just be me?
So then the question is, who is you? So if it is you, what is that you?
Maybe that's just an abstract question that doesn't really mean anything. Like, maybe it's just this body. Fine, maybe that's a fine enough answer. Or maybe it's just my brain. Like, maybe I am just an animal in this. I still believe there's something mystical, something esoteric going on. I think that's
but maybe whether it is esoteric or something bigger or not. But even if that is the case, like, even if consciousness is happening in the brain, it's still prior to anything you call you. So then the question is, who is this you? The suffering comes from identification with this you. So you have to go deeply into the experience of who is this you and what is this me. When there is attachment to this me, there's suffering because there is false beliefs happening. So even if you are just an animal and consciousness is happening in the brain, it's still, who is this me? And is this me a reality? So that's where so much suffering is tied up, is in this illusion of me. So even if you believe consciousness is happening in the brain, that's okay. But this story of you isn't true. The story of you is always changing and isn't a fixed reality. What is fixed is experiencing, is consciousness. And this is deeply relaxing when this is recognized. Whether it belongs to the animal or not, that's irrelevant. But noticing what is permanent in experiencing and what isn't permanent in experiencing. When you're identified with something that isn't permanent, suffering entails because there is false beliefs that arise and there is attachments, and then there is looking for a permanent sense of you in all of that. So a constant trying to make you permanent.
Yeah, there's all like whatever's the case, there's definitely some truth to the idea that we definitely act out, we kind of use an avatar to kind of navigate the world, and often unconsciously, and people kind of have a kind of character persona, and that more self-aware people generally have less of that.
Yeah, and people believe it's real and then go to war for that. You know, so much suffering from this belief that it's real. So what I really enjoyed about speaking with neuroscientists about this and the similarity, and neuroscientists that you could say they're more scientific, so people have more of a tendency to believe more science, is that neuroscientists, the first thing they would say is that nothing that you think can be a reality. There is truth, there is not truth, but there is, it's helping you function, it's helping you navigate this world, but it cannot be true because it's chemicals happening. And so the problems that are arising is the belief in this you and that it's real. So what is happening in this experience that never changes and that is always here? And this is the refuge.
Yeah. I just often, like, a lot of the like, sometimes I feel a bit like, and I know this is, I know like this could be just my kind of me interpreting the kind of the self-inquiry incorrectly, but sometimes I feel like, and I see a lot of like kind of detachment going on in the non-dual community and in myself. It doesn't really feel healthy.
Yeah, totally.
And sometimes when I feel my healthiest is actually when none of this is in my head at all, and something just flows very effortlessly.
Yeah. And that's really not what's being spoken about, but I understand that that can be a side effect for some people, but that is a misinterpretation of what's being spoken about. This is an absolute intimacy with what's being experienced. It's not a detachment from the person, it's not a detachment from the feelings or experience, it's a total embracing of everything that happens. But I can understand that that happens, and that's a really sad reality that that happens, that a detachment happens. But that is from a misunderstanding. Whether whose fault that misunderstanding is unknowable. Whether that's down to bad teaching, life, or misinterpretation, that's that. But this isn't a detachment. It's really not a detachment. It's not a rejection of feelings. It's absolute embracing of feelings. What it is trying to point to is that your stories about your feelings aren't truth. They can be helpful, they can be good to name things, but they're not reality. And this is where everyone always gets lost, is that my thoughts and my feelings are real, and I am real, and I am experiencing. What is always here? What never changes? These are the questions. But yet the mind will keep pulling itself back to more thoughts, and that is detachment, back to more ideas. So what is happening that's beyond thoughts and beyond ideas and beyond feelings? But this is not a rejection of feelings.
What about beyond? But then I like, sometimes I feel like and this might just be a mistake that I've made, but sometimes I worry that I felt like I'm by recognizing that there have been a lot of negative thoughts and negative beliefs, habitual beliefs and thoughts. I've accidentally thrown the baby out with the bathwater and rejected a lot of like healthy kind of intuitive thoughts.
Yeah, and I really recommend just to recondition yourself in that way, and to go to somebody that can work with you in detail about how to transform negative thoughts into more positive thoughts, to become more aware of it, to work on your life so more positive thoughts are conjured, to look at past as to why that's arisen. But that's not what non-duality is about. But non-duality is not saying don't do that. It's really healthy to have a healthy instrument and to understand. Oh, sorry, I just knocked off my microphone. To understand what's happening in that instrument. But non-duality is pointing to who is experiencing all of that. Who? But like you said earlier, I can feel now that we're maybe going round and round. But that's not a criticism of you, Joseph. That's really beautiful what you've brought up. And I'm not telling you not to believe or believe things. I'm saying, who is experiencing those beliefs? That's my question to you. Yeah. But thank you very much for asking and for being willing to explore this subject with me. It's really beautiful.
That's right. Thanks a lot. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.